Right. So my whole and sole purpose of explaining you JUnit Selenium framework is to establish some foundation of what is a framework. Okay. JUnit is rarely used in any project for Selenium, right? It's rarely used with Selenium for Selenium. JUnit is mostly towards is used for unit testing a lot. With the it's famous among the developers. They write the unit test there. So JUnit is still very famous unit test framework, but with Selenium it's not widely used. However, it still can be used. I have shown you how to use a JUnit framework with Selenium, right? But JUnit in itself is a restrictive. That means it doesn't have many features which you might need at the later stages of the Selenium project. And that's the reason you need to have a lot of different available modern features for your framework, and that's the reason you usually don't go with JUnit framework. So having said that, why did we do this is to so that I could establish this foundational work inside your head on what and how to develop a framework, right? How execution happens, how the Maven project is structured, like how to add dependencies and how do you write test cases in it. Then you have test cases, how to pass the browser information. Then we also discussed about WebDriver factory, right? These pre and post hooks. These are called as hooks, before and after. Then how to manage the browser, right? This is again a very important concept. So we try to learn few concepts here, like sending browser information from Maven command line, again very important thing. And I also had few more things to tell within the same framework. For example, I want to talk about page object model. Then I want to talk about log4j, and I want to talk about some headless driver stuff, which I actually skipped. The reason I skipped these things as a part of JUnit because they are not really about JUnit. These are enhancements or a specific important concepts of a framework, and they can also be learned with the Cucumber. And I just don't want you guys to be delayed in learning Cucumber. And all of this which we learned right now, we learned all of this: WebDriver factory, command line, page object model, log4j, headless driver. They all will be there with Cucumber as well, right? So we actually have stopped ourselves till step 5, and we did not proceed to these implementations like log4j and headless driver. We did not move here. Rather, we'll try to learn these things as a part of Cucumber framework. All right. Any doubt so far on what we are doing and how we are doing it? Okay. If not, then let me quickly go towards our next agenda, which is our Cucumber framework. So Cucumber framework is kept, you know where it is. So this is the repository. You have to come here, and you have to go to master branch, and master branch contains the code of all the branches which you see here. So we have around 16 branches here for now. I'm going to add more branches. So this is actually a work in progress. I've been developing this framework for the batch 9 people, right? Those guys have actually done it till this step, and I'm actually supposed to be adding more branches, like adding more concepts here. But you guys will be starting from this branch. And when I say you have to start from this branch, don't get confused that you have to deal with some GitHub branches here. You don't have to. This is how I have tried to structure the steps of how a framework is to be developed, so that it gives me ease of explaining you guys. But you guys don't have to really go in creating branches in the GitHub repository, right? You will be just doing everything in a single branch. However, you should be putting it in your work in your GitHub repositories, the way I was talking about in the last session when I was asking Manish to share his screen, and he was doing git check-in and check-out and commit and all those things, right? I think I forgot to upload the video for that, but I'll do that today itself, so that if people have missed it, you would know. The idea is whatever code, even a single line of project or line of code you're writing, it has to be present inside GitHub repository. There cannot be any exception. Okay, if you go by this rule, you will learn the concepts of Git very fast. If you think, oh, it is very boring to do, let's skip that, it's not really not necessary, then it will be very difficult for you to understand the concepts of Git comes the practice. When it comes to Git, the practice is very, very, very important. The more you try to do check in, check out, commit, the more issues which you're going to get. And that's a very important building block of learning anything. That is the issue which you're getting. If you're not getting any issues, either you're not working or you're doing something wrong. You ought to get issues, and while solving those issues, you learn. Thereby, you learn. There is no shortcuts to it. So that's the reason I'm saying, if you want to use Git, you use Git, and when you use it, you will face issues. You post those issues, I'll solve those issues for you, or sometimes you also solve, you can solve by yourself, and that's how basically you learn. Anyway, now we are going to start with this Cucumber Selenium framework. I'll go and open it in the IntelliJ. I'll go to the first branch, which is this one. I'm saying this again and again. You don't have to worry about branches. You don't have to do this checkout and do all these things. All you have to worry about is to come to this documentation, check what. Guys, can you all go on mute, please? Okay, thanks. Right, so you have to follow the instructions. So I have tried my level best to put a very accurate documentation here, so that when you actually do it, you don't face much issues. Okay, but still sometimes you might, or whether either I have missed something or maybe you didn't understand it, so you still can get some issues, and you difficult in understanding what's happening, and you know where to ask questions. So we have another forum, right? You go there and ask questions. Okay, another important repository which we have is, let me show you, because we are going to start with Cucumber. So this brings us that we need to understand how how BDD really looks like, and how to create the BDD or Gherkin, sorry, in a BDD Gherkin environment. So for that, I have already created a repository here. And here we have some examples, and they are not always accurate examples, but some examples here to give you a glimpse on how to create scenarios, right? So let me just show you that. This is called as feature scenarios Gherkin examples. Guys, can you hear me? I would strongly recommend you guys to read all the scenarios and try to understand the way they are written, because it is very, very important for you guys to read everything and compare that with the images that I have provided here. So I have provided some images here, and this is just a simple application, a simple travel application. And I want you guys, while when we did Jira session, I think I covered this part there. So I've put all the feature files and given and sent stories around this application, and I put it here. So I would really recommend to read every scenario. Don't just go and give a glimpse and you say, okay, I understand it. I want you guys to go through each and every scenario and see how it is written. Okay. Then I'm not going to explain each and everything of here, because this is a different application. Our purpose is to do an e-commerce, is a travel application. But when you go and read about it, it becomes very easy for you to implement the similar concepts for your e-commerce application website. All right, let me go back now. I'll come here, right? So first thing you guys would be doing is to go to this framework, okay? And you don't have to clone it. So I don't want you to clone, but rather I want you to keep this as a reference. So you can actually download it and clone it and open it as a separate repository, but you should not be working on this project. You should be working on your own project, which is simulating this project, right? And here I have written that step-by-step things which you will need to do. If you need to go to a specific code example, I have also provided you the reference branch. If you want to see what is the corresponding code I have here, you go to that specific branch.
and you actually see the code there, or you can actually go inside the feature files and you will see things there. Okay, so this is how basically it is structured. This is how this framework is going to be used. So you will not be actually doing or working on top of this framework. Rather, you will be creating your own framework along the same line. Along the same line I have done. And if you have any doubts, you can actually go back to this URL and actually go through and navigate through this code depending on what step you are currently on. If you are on a let's say different step, fifth step, for example, you are on fifth step then and you want to see the code. However, I have also listed the code here also so that you don't have to go to the code exact project code. So I have listed things here as well. Just in case there are a few things which is missing, you can actually go to this branch by doing this, and you can actually download the code or you can check out the code and you can actually use from the UI itself. You can actually go here and see the code inside the project. Uh, any doubts so far on how to use this? I don't want you guys to be like totally confused on what I just said. Did you guys understand what I'm trying to ask you to do? No? Yes? Yes. Arpit said yes. Okay. What about you guys, Manish? Original batch 10 guys?
Yep, understood.
Okay, okay, thanks. So, first thing first, you guys first need to create a Maven project. The steps for that I have written here. I hope everyone of you now understand how to create a Maven project. Now, at least you should know about this. So, you'll go and create a Maven project, and in the form.xml file, you're supposed to be adding these four things, or rather five things. If you skip this one, it's still fine, but you ought to add these four things: one, two, three, four. That is Cucumber JVM, Cucumber JUnit, JUnit 4, and Selenium library. Code for that I have also written here. So go to dependencies, IO Cucumber, Cucumber hyphen Java, Cucumber dot version. Right. So this is a variable. That means it has a value which is actually defined here, 6.6.1. Right. And this Cucumber version is actually the variable which I am using here. So in Maven, if you want to use a variable, you use it like this. You create the tag for it, and then you use dollar and curly braces and put the variable name here. Okay, and at runtime it will replace the value of this. This is a key. This is a value. The key you mention here, and runtime it will replace it with the value. So that if you want to change the version, all you have to make changes is here. That's the only place you're going to make changes. You don't have to go into each and every line and make changes. Okay, that's the reason we use variables. The concept of properties, also called as variables, in the form.xml file. A new thing you learned today in form. So these are variables called as properties. So as you see, we have Cucumber hyphen Java, you have Cucumber hyphen JUnit, you have Cucumber Pico container, which is something you don't have to worry too much about now. Later we want to talk about it. I even did not taught this to batch 9 guys still, but this is an advanced concept, and you need to have a good framework, running framework, before I actually could explain this. So for now, it is actually used for dependency injection concept, which we'll see later. But for now, you don't have to worry too much about it. So still, if you want to remove this, you can. It says we don't use it for now. So we have use case for this. Then JUnit is what we need. You might ask that we are not using JUnit, we are using Cucumber now. Okay, so it's partly true. We are using Cucumber along with JUnit. Cucumber needs a runner to execute itself, and that runner in our case is for now is JUnit. So we are using JUnit with Cucumber for our framework, which is a very established framework. Cucumber can also be used with TestNG, for which you might have to use the dependency. So this will be there, and there will be another dependency, maybe Cucumber TestNG or something. Cucumber can be used with different underlying frameworks. Okay, Cucumber in itself is not really cannot be called as a framework. Rather, it's a layer. right? It's an abstraction layer, I may say so, okay, which I will try to explain in a while. But Cucumber in itself is not entirely a framework. It's a layer or abstraction layer which you use or put on top of an existing framework so that it abstracts the underlying logic and gives more readability to the end customer. Now I said a lot of things in the same line. I'm sorry for that. I'll try to explain that. But let's not digress. First, let's go step by step. First step is you create a Maven project. Second step is you add the dependencies like this. Okay. So I have a framework. So I have first step is that this is my first branch. I have the relevant project being created, and I have added the dependencies there. And make sure that in the properties you have these two things, else to start giving you some errors and all. So make sure you add these things as well. Rest of things you don't have to worry too much. Now, next step is let me go to this branch. So once you are done with this, then you have to do the second step. So you will go and create the new feature file, right? So now let me explain you what is a feature file. So first of all, feature file is a non-Java resource. That means it is not a Java file. It's not a .java file. And in Maven, there is some set of rules. So we have in Maven we have these two folders, main and test. If it is a main development code, you put it in main. If it is a test development code or resource file, you put it in test. We are supposed to be creating a test framework, so we don't have to touch anything in the main method. Sorry, in the main folder. It's not the main method, it's main folder. We will be doing everything in the test folder because we are supposed to be writing a test case or creating a test framework. Now, second thing is we are not creating a .java file. We are creating a .feature file. So all the dots, so there's a rule in Maven, all the .java files goes inside the Java folder. Right now you don't see a Java folder inside test because there is no file as such. And all the non-Java file, which is .text, .feature, .xml or whatever which is not .java, goes inside the resources. So resources I create a subfolder called as features. I don't necessarily have to do it, but it's a good practice to create a parent folder inside which you can keep your feature file. I could have directly done it beneath resources as well, no worries there. No hard and fast rules. Now I'll open it. So this is my feature file. Now what is a feature file, right? Now if I put this into contrast to, let's just say, I put this into contrast to, let me open the JUnit. I would like to put this into contrast with that. If I open the JUnit, which is where we go, this one. So this is our JUnit. Now you compare this with this, right? In JUnit, we were writing test cases like this. So we wanted to create a test case, we'll write here. Test case check, website is working, let's say this is a test case. So here we are writing Selenium code, driver.get. Then we are saying expected is something, actual is something, and then we are asserting it. Now that's how test case looks like, isn't it? Test case has set of steps. So here this is the first step, open the URL. Then these are some intermediate steps of expectation and actual, setting of expected and actual, and this is the last step of validation or verification. And we are checking whether the page which has been navigated has the actual text, is the actual text of the title is matching the expected text. That's how all the test cases in the world are written. Just when it comes to the manual test case writing, the same thing happens. It's just you write it in the more English oriented syntax, so that anyone can read and understand. Now this code, if I show this code or you show this code to your wife, sister, brother, father, mother, they will not be able to understand really what's happening, right? They'll say, what is the driver, what is the dot, what is the method, what is the test manager, what is the class, and what the hell, all that. They won't understand it. And that is the main problem which Cucumber solves, right? So Cucumber, as I said, is not a framework. Cucumber is not really capable of a lot of things which the basic underlying frameworks like JUnit all provide. However, for example, TestNG is very rich in when it comes to the framework. But Cucumber, the usefulness of Cucumber actually comes in the form of its readability. So the main advantage, let's say someone asks you, why do you use Cucumber? Why don't you use TestNG or JUnit or any other framework or any hybrid level framework? If I say so, then your clear answer would be that the use case of Cucumber is that it gives you readability and an abstraction. Like abstraction simply here means that you are hiding the underlying details from the customer or the client. And when you hide it, you write your test cases in such a manner so that if someone reads them, it becomes easy for them to understand, and vice versa as well. Like the person who have no clue about how to write the test case in JUnit can also write the scenario. Am I making sense, guys? Are you guys following what I'm trying to say here?
Yes.
Okay. If I compare this with this, you'll get the picture what I'm trying to say. So this is a test case which is checking the website is working, and this is a test case which is already doing the same thing and also doing something extra where it is also searching. Now, if you give this to your father, mother, sister, etc., or for that matter, a manager or a business analyst or a client who have no idea what is Java and JavaScript and code and all those things, they can now read it and they actually can make sense of it. They can know exactly, okay, given user open browser and user navigated to the home application UI, like these two things were given, like prerequisites. When user search for product laptop, when user did something, then search result page is straight, then this should happen, right? So we have given when, then. This is called the Gherkin syntax, right? This is just an established template given to you by Cucumber in a given when then syntax, wherein you can actually write your requirements as well as your test cases, and these are actually called as user stories. Like user stories are something which actually depicts the storyline of an end user, what an end user would like to do. The user is able to open, the scenario name is user able to open the browser, navigate to the URL and search for the product. So I am writing given user open the browser, user navigate to the home application URL, user search for product laptop, and then something happens. So this is the contrast between JUnit and the Cucumber framework. That's the reason you guys use Cucumber framework, so that it gives you a first thing abstraction and readability, and vice versa. That is, if you don't want to write it because you actually don't know about the scenario or user story, who knows about the scenario in your project? By the way, can anyone answer this? Who writes the requirement? That's a plain question. Who writes the requirement? Okay, so
BA, right?
yeah,
Be
so yeah, BA, right? So business analyst actually creates the requirement. Uh, why? Because he is the one who is more close to the client. He tries to understand requirements from the client, and he is the one who actually creates these requirements, and he is the one who actually writes them. Now he can write it in a n number of ways, right? He can write it in a document, he can write it in a Jira, he can write it in a Excel file, he can write in n number of ways. But if we ask, or let's say if our project is BDD oriented, right? If we say our project is BDD oriented, and then BA also is aware about how the Gherkin is written and how and syntax of BDD, he can very well write the requirements in the form of these user stories, which can then directly be sent to developers as well as automation testers to process further. That means developer will use this to create their own own development code, and testers can actually use these requirements to validate. Are you guys getting? So that nothing is missed. Another challenge with the traditional approach is when the BA write a requirement in a document format, then the testers have to declutter the document. Then they have to bring the test cases out of that document, create the test cases, and then those test cases are executed and then passed to the automation test team, and automation test team then create the scenarios for it. And this brings a huge gap of mapping, like traceability metrics. If you have heard the term traceability metrics, how will I trace the requirement with the my test cases validation part? Something like if I could draw it, let me see. I'll have to share a new whiteboard maybe. If I could draw it like this. So if this is the requirement, this is the document given to you by BA, then the testers have to bring the functionalities out like this, and they will give it to the automation testers, and automation tester will actually create the test script. So let's say this is your automation test cases. These are your manual test cases, and this is your requirement document, right? This is, let's say, the traditional approach. Now we don't want it, right? We don't want it. So if when it comes to the BDD approach, what happens is the BA itself writes the requirements in these formats, in the user stories format, and they are being passed quickly to the automation testers, and automation tester will then convert them quickly, the same syntaxes and corresponding automation test case. So now the traceability is very straightforward. Whatever BA has given is directly gets consumed by the automation tester, and they will create the test cases out of it. Okay, so this is another advantage which you get when you use BDD, and here the adoption has to be there with the BA as well. So BA also supposed to be aware about these things, and he need to create the requirements in such a manner so that it will be consumed directly by the automation tester team to automate the testing or automate the user story. Guys, am I making sense? Because this is important to understand why do we need Cucumber. What is the advantage of using Cucumber? So I've actually narrated two: readability and abstraction, and second is it can be directly consumed by the automation tester. BA can write the user story so that the issue of traceability metrics does not exist, which happens a lot in a real-time project wherein there's a requirement but there is no corresponding test cases for it, and the requirement later fails in the production and bug comes because there is no test cases being included to test that functionality, because there was not traceability metrics available or present, right? But if you write in a BDD format, every requirement are accounted for as a part of the automation test script, because the same requirement is directly being sent to the automation test